I've got the perfect story to tell you.
Okay, go for
So I was borrowing a folding chair from my old roommate because she moved out, which she took all the chairs that I was using, right? It's fine. She had some folding chairs that she wasn't going to use. Well, I work at my computer 5 days a week for 8 hours. And apparently this folding chair was just not meant to do because I had gotten up, but as I was getting up, all of a sudden I just went down because the chair folded just in half. Not a fun experience.
Well,
So now I am sitting on a stool.
think of it this way. You're having to exercise that mid and back muscles to keep yourself upright.
Yeah. To avoid the back pain of staying hunched over all night.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Or would you like to say it was taking up donations to get DJ a new chair,
It's
taking
okay.
up donations to get Deanna a new chair?
Oh my god, it's fine. I'm I'm only here for another month and then I move in with Neil. And my nice new table, my nice new desk, and my nice new chair are all over there.
Okay, all right.
So,
Cancel the GoFundMe. Cancel the GoFundMe. We're not in that desperation stage. Somebody has a boy.
hey, I bought that stuff. It's just over there.
All right, well, roll that intro. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Deanna. And we're
The Halfwit Sisters.
By now, I will have gotten you the new intro opening that has
Yeah.
our updated titles on there. So, hope you guys like that. Um, First, let's open up with how dare you freaking post all we got into a fight and we're not talking to each other. Like, just post my response TikTok and we'll just leave it at that.
There's no episode this week because Becca and I got into a big argument and we haven't talked to each other.
I mean, okay, yes, we fought, but also you never contacted me either, or let me know you were doing this. Or the TikTok video, you just kind of blindsided me and were just like, hey, everybody, we fought! And so now, here I am, awkwardly posting a TikTok video going, yeah, we did that. She said I said something, and I say I didn't say it, and now we're just being awkward about the whole thing. Posting to TikTok like, hey, tell her, because I'm not talking to her, that she needs to text me so that we can talk about the thing that happened. And already I got Mom calling me going, do I need to sit you both down and talk to you guys about this? No, Mom, we're grown-ass women. We can handle this whole situation. So TikTok, if you could tell my sister to text me, that would be great. Thanks.
Yeah.
We did get into a fight. But on my end, I'm just all these wires. On my end, at work, I told you guys, I've been having some tough times at work, and my boss had been yelling at me. I guess she didn't realize, but I'd realized for about 2 weeks straight, about every little thing. And some of it was entirely outside of my control. Some of it was new policies she hadn't told anybody about and expected us to still follow. Things like that. And by the time I reached, so 2 weeks of being straight yelled at, and by the time we reached our thing, we were, I guess, both in a mood or whatever. And I know for myself, the moment our voices raised up even a bit, it just took me to those 2 weeks I'd been yelling, and I just snapped. So, and I was just like, well, we're done. We're done. we're
like,
gonna end it here.
I knew you had been having a rough time, which is why I was like, call me tomorrow, and hung up. Because I was
And
like,
then you
this is
didn't.
not where we need to go in this conversation.
And we didn't even talk. We didn't talk for an entire. And it wasn't like I didn't call in the if you like go to our at Halfwit Sisters on TikTok, we clearly say like we didn't talk. You also posted YouTube. We didn't talk for a week, and a lot of that was because I had to get right with myself about all that stuff. And I messaged you too. I was like, I'm thinking about quitting my job. Yeah. I'm legit thinking about quitting my job. And I never really talk like that. You know, to me, to get to that point means there's something fundamentally wrong with the position. And so I messaged you. I was like, I'm thinking about quitting my job. My roommates were like, quit it. Then mom was all like, yeah, no, you should probably quit it if you're getting to that stage too. And like, even I saw my doctor that I ended up taking 2 days off of work. And I saw my doctor for my psych doctor, and he was like, well, I hope you can find a job that you can go to happily, which means quit your job.
He can't encourage you to quit your job, but he can encourage you to find a happier work environment.
Yeah, which is what I'm now in the process of doing, finding a happier work environment. So I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know exactly where I'm starting. We've talked about me trying to do substitute teaching. A whole bunch of other people that I've talked to have been like, no, yeah, teach. Because apparently anytime that I do any kind of job like we do, like our teaching, which I've always had like jobs I go back to. Teaching is one of the jobs that I've gone back to. I've had like 4 main job types in my life, and teaching has always been one that I've gone back to continuously. And so people are like, you might as well just go all the way.
And it seems every time you do teach, you enjoy that aspect of the job. So it's really is something you should look into.
Look into it. Yeah. I hear you all. I hear you. You can cancel the petition for me to quit my job. I have heard you all. I'm holding on to my little screen thing because I can't hold my mic. I have heard you all. I'm in the process. Like, you can't. Right now, we're in such a state that you can't just quit a job and then jump into another one like right after, right? You have to stay in a job that you don't like because you need to keep some money coming in until you can find the job, right?
Yeah.
Because it's that much harder if you quit a job. Like me and my roommate, me and the wife were both unemployed for almost about a year after I had shut down my business, and she had to quit her job for medical reasons, right? We were both unemployed for a while because we both could not find a job that was hiring for whatever reason. And then once the pandemic hit, once the panorama or our skippable cutscene hit, like it became that much harder to find work. And you mentioned like you were like very fortunate. I don't have the exact same resources here in Texas. So yeah, having to discover new ways of getting work that doesn't, and like job hunting now is so hard. Yeah. It's so hard. Like you have to go for it.
One of those things where it's like you have to, without lying, finagle your way into making them think you have more experience at that job.
Well, even more than that, you have to get past their filters first. Nowadays, businesses have filters that they send a lot of the, like you know how you have to send an electronic resume and then you have to fill out a whole bunch of boxes, right? Those are all filters that they use to weed out what they don't. right? And so now it's no longer gearing your resume towards your actual experience. It's gearing your resume towards the keywords that are most likely to get caught by their filter so that you move on to the next stage, which is hopefully a real person, right? So you have to get past
buzzwords.
Yeah, so you have to get past the bot before you can get to a real person. And that in itself is real frustrating because it's no longer like you see an ad in the newspaper, you call in, you set up an interview, you move on, right? Now it's you see an ad on Indeed or for whatever reason, Indeed or Monster or any of those other popular ones, and now you have to sit down, you have to fill out your resume on Indeed, and then you go to the thing, and they're like, "Oh, thank you for filling out your resume on Indeed. Now you have to fill out your resume here." And you're like, "Well, okay, now," right? And then it's like step by step, and it's like, "Give us a PDF. Great, thanks for giving us a PDF. Now fill out these boxes that ask the exact same things." And it's like this constant thing, and it's so frustrating, and that's why And that is the biggest complaint that I think our generation, the millennial generation, has with the job market nowadays. And why we push back so hard against the older generation's expectations that we should have had a job right now. How? When you put so many barriers for us to get through.
Yeah. Like, I've been fortunate in the jobs that I have gotten, I've gotten because I was in the right industry to know the people who were desperate to fill these positions.
Right.
But again, they're in New York. And I have been looking out for some stuff in Dallas to see if I can forward anything your way.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so few in there because Dallas is just a different environment than New York.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't have we don't have shows every week. We don't have like a Broadway thing going on here, so we don't have a lot of stuff that is in the same tourism market as
brand ambassading was.
Right.
And brand ambassading got me into doing the work at the hospital that I did. It got me, and from the hospital I found one of their people learned about the substitute teaching and how they were making a big call for substitute teaching, and that's how I got into that.
Mm-hmm. And so, and then of course we're going to hear, well, like, why don't you try networking? Right? You should be networking. You should be networking, especially in the industry that you want to be in. I ran around networking at game industry events, not like PAX, which has PAX. Whatever the heck the actual name is called, but PAX, which is a really big gamer event to go to, gamer conference to go to. I didn't go to those. I went to things like the Game Developer Conference. I went to places that was specific for development and developers and game companies looking to hire talent. And I would network continuously. I had people and I was talking to all sorts of people, and I still couldn't get an in. And there's a lot of reasons why I couldn't get in. One reason, the main reason though, is because I chose a very difficult field to get it through, and that's writing. And nowadays, you're like, well, there's so many game writing positions out there. Yes, but sometimes they're filled internally. Oftentimes they're filled internally. And those that get, and the other positions that I find where you could get writing is to do indie. But doing indie means that you either have to find a group that is looking for a writer and is willing to pay that continued expense of a writer, or you are looking for continual projects that you can jump in on, be a writer for them for that small amount of time, then look for the next group that needs a writer, and you continuously do that. And then that moves you into what's pretty much called the hustle, right? That's pretty much freelance writing at that point. And I was talking with Mom about this. I was like, I don't enjoy the hustle. I love writing, and I love working with people on their ideas, and I love helping bring things to fruition, but I hate the hustle. And that's what networking and freelancing is all about, is hustling. You're having to hustle yourself. I'm here for a buck, come and get me, and it's it's not the greatest feeling when you get rejected or you get dropped from a project because one, they're like, oh, well, it turns out we don't want a story after all. Or they're like, we're not as far along for a story as we thought we were after talking to you, because apparently my vision of what a story equals to what they want is different. Yeah. And I can go into that at a different time. But that's, you know, like, networking on my end hasn't worked out. And even when I was a business owner, like, I constantly was out there peddling, hey, you need social media? Everybody needs social media. You need somebody to run your social media accounts? Guess what I do? Nothing, right? Even though there were still, I went to all of the possible little small businesses, big businesses, mid-sized businesses. I was on LinkedIn and stuff like that. I still struggled to get the business I needed to run my own, to like float my own company.
Yeah.
So that brings us to life.
Perfect transition.
So we're gonna try not to fight over it this time, but last time we were talking about Soul, which you'll never hear that episode ever.
Honestly, it was more of a play-by-play. We didn't need to give a play-by-play. So
you will never hear that episode ever. That is staying locked up in our vault. Although I will say our mom wants to hear it because both you and I said we like fought and it was over that fucking movie.
I told her we fought. She started laughing. She straight up laughed and was like, that's great. I want to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure we could just cut out that small little bit and it's like, if you really want to know like how it went, like this, right? But there's no reason to do that. Like, you get enough of that from our TikToks. Like that's more than enough. So backing it up, let's talk about the movie Soul.
Yeah. Soul is this beautiful just story about this guy who's always in the grind, and that's all he does. His single focus is getting the gig of his lifetime and being this jazz musician.
I get where you're coming from there. I know what scene you want to talk about, though. Go for it. Keep going.
And yeah, eventually, and he ends up through a series of events being the mentor of 22, who is this pre-born soul who needs to find their last
puzzle piece,
spark token, personality trait to be born. Or as 22 and Joe Gardner think, their purpose to be born and to go to Earth and be on Earth. And just the entire time that they're in like the pre-ether world, don't know what to call it. 22 is like, I don't want to go to Earth. I can see what it all is because they have this giant museum of everything. And they've had mentors from like across history. All the big names have probably been a mentor towards them. And they're not impressed with it and they just want to stay where they are. You know, accidents happen. They end up on Earth. 22 in Joe's body, Joe in a body of a cat. And then all of a sudden, through a small series of events, that you're seeing 22 experience Earth for the first time and truly experience it. Getting to taste pizza, getting to feel the wind, getting to do all these things that whilst they knew of and could see in the Hall of Everything, they couldn't experience because there was nothing to experience up there. And there are just these beautiful moments. One of my favorite moments was when 22 is laying on the subway grate, feeling the wind just blow, which, knowing New York is disgusting, but visually just seeing them experience the sensation of air rushing up and doing that whole floaty bit is beautiful. And them finding their little things about living on Earth that they love. Beautiful.
So we're a spoiler cast. I'm going to set this here. So we know this minute right here, spoiler. So after that, the whole thing is trying to get to Joe's big gig. Like he booked his gig, the gig of a lifetime, he thinks. And while he was going, like some of the trailers showed this, he falls through a manhole cover. And he's open manhole, and that's how he ends up in the world of the reborn, or the newborns. The world of the newborns. That's what I'll call it. The world of the newborns. And this rush to get there, that's where you hit the peak of the film, is 22 having already experienced everything and is going, no, it's right here. The thing I know that might be me is here. And Joe's like, no, that's my body. And it sets off this chase where eventually the two of them get separated from their body. And at some point, her 22's card is filled out. But again, Joe being Joe, who we see multiple times, is very what's narcissistic kind of in this. It's all me. This is my chance. This is how I need to do this. It needs to happen. It's narcissistic. And he's like, no, that's my spark. That's the reason why you succeeded. So we get to the end, and eventually they learn that the whole meaning of this whole, what am I trying to say?
The whole point of getting that last circle filled wasn't finding your purpose on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
It was finding like the inspiration or the will to experience all of it.
Mm-hmm.
So not so much purpose, but just will.
Mm-hmm. So we decided. So that's a little bit of the spoiler ends here, there will be probably more spoilers after this point. So let's talk about a couple scenes that we both liked, that you liked, and then some scenes that I liked. I guess we can trade off. Would you like to do it that way?
Well, I mentioned the one scene that I liked, which was on the subway grate. So why don't you go ahead?
Okay. One of the scenes that I liked is the way that they showed the zone, and then how closely that zone was tied to the Lost. Right? The Lost is this land where essentially if you became obsessed with trying to stay in the zone, you would be swallowed up into obsession and become a wandering spirit. And you make this a very big deal. So they show you what happens in this obsession. And it's very clear that Joe is bordering on that obsession right there. Right? Like if he hadn't fallen through that manhole cover, if the events didn't play out the way that they had played out, he could have been there going, I need my chance, and gotten sucked up. Like we saw the one scene that they show where they were like freeing the lost guy. They're like, we find the soul and then we return it. And it was like the banker dude who was like, I need to get a deal or whatever it was. And the guy just like wakes up and is like, oh my God, what have I been doing with my life? Right? But that was like, it started because he was in the zone and he was making shares and he was getting money. And then he's like became obsessed with that and got swallowed up in the loss. And that's one of my favorite scenes.
Another scene that I really liked was the scene in the hallway between 22 and the student.
Yeah.
And unintentionally, 22 doing this very reverse psychology thing, because 22 was at this point in agreement that Earth kind of sucked. Like, why bother doing any of this stuff? And the student was just about to give up the trombone. And you had seen earlier the student get into this zone of the getting carried away with the music and just being so present in the music that everything fell away. And then you get to the hallway scene and the student's like, it's kind of silly. I'm gonna give it up. And 22's like, yeah, go ahead. And the student's like, yeah, but let me just play you this one thing, and if it sucks, then I'll quit.
Mm-hmm.
And they start playing, and once again, they kind of fall into that zone of being in the music, and 22 sees it for the first time from the other side. Because they've seen people in the zone and seen people getting into the Lost Ones, but like they see this beautiful, and it's kind of like this aurora borealis in the ether world of this beauty of them being in the zone. So she gets to see it from the other side of just the pure love that the girl has for the trombone and being in that music. And all of a sudden, that's when 22 realizes, hey, I should give this a shot. And the girl realizes, no, I shouldn't give this up. I love this.
Yeah. That was definitely one of my favorite, and I agree that was the big turning point for 22, who was so stringent about, I don't want to do this, and then sees it and is like, you know what, I really want to give this a go. And that leads us into a couple, like a montage of scenes, really. The next one that I really like, which kind of follows off that one, is the barber shop. So the barbershop scene for me just showed how closed-minded or single-minded Joe was in his whole thing. He's like, oh, I talked to this guy. I forget what the barber's name is, but he's like, I talked to this barber, and we talk about jazz all the time, and that's all we talk about. Well, of course, 22, now being in the body, talks about other things, because jazz isn't 22's thing. And now Joe is on the outside looking in. And for the first time, he's being allowed to see the world. Oh, he's being able to see the world for the first time. Not from his perspective, but from the outsider's perspective. And he realizes that because of and this is kind of his moment where he's starting to realize that he, in his single-minded pursuit of one thing, he ignored everything else. Relationships, cultivating relationships, maybe love, but definitely friendship, right? He ignored anything that wasn't jazz. And so to see and hear the barber talk about his kids and how his dream wasn't to be a barber, but to be a vet, that was kind of ground shaking, both for 22, but for Joe as well, who was like, what do you mean you wanted to be something else? Like, you didn't become the thing you wanted to be? What? So that's a scene that I really like, because that really shook both of them into realizing there might be more than just the single idea of what a spark could be, and really hints to the viewers like spark is more than what you think it is.
And I think, sorry, my brain just froze. It's like I had the scene in my mind and then I just completely blanked. Apparently I didn't like it that much.
Well, one of the scenes you talked to me about that you kind of liked was the one where, in the very beginning, when he and 22 are meeting for the first time, and he's showing his life.
Yes. Okay, so the mentors all have like this golden hue around all of their memories of times they were very inspirational and times that they were very like that brought joy to someone or something or whatever. Their life is filled with this golden light. And then 22 is like, or Joe's like, no, this isn't my life, because he like pretended to be someone else so he wouldn't get sent to the light. And 22 makes him press this little button, and all of a sudden you get his life, and it's bathed in this blue, somber light of him just standing there, watching his life, of like all these moments that he thought were like great moments where he was almost there, weren't quite what he remembered.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all like, thanks for coming, kind of going into an audition, and then thank you, and or sitting and just watching TV, just like these kind of monogamous, boring moments.
Mm-hmm.
And he's sitting there seeing his life for the first time from a different perspective again. All the movie's really about perspective,
Mm-hmm.
too, but he's seeing this of like, oh. And then, of course, he's in denial of, no, this is my life. You got to see my life.
Mm-hmm. Right. Like, this isn't how I remember. Then they take it to that jazz scene, like when he first heard jazz music for the first time.
Yeah.
And that's where he's like, that's where you see his obsession start. And him trying to convince 22 how important that moment is, and how that was him finding his spark. Okay, next.
The ocean and the fish.
Huh?
The ocean and the fish. That was the other moment.
Go for it.
Do you want to tell it?
No, you tell it.
Okay. So eventually Joe gets back into his body, and he gets to go to his gig. And he's so present in this that when he comes out, it's like everything he wanted. And then he just walks out of the club, and he's like, what now? Now you go home, you sleep, you come back, and you do it again. Because that's what performance is. And he expected so much more. And then the lady who is the head of the quartet that he played with, it's just like, that reminds me of the story of this little fish. They're swimming around in the water, and he comes back across a bigger fish, and the little fish is like, hey, I'm looking for the ocean. And the bigger fish is like, you're in it. And the little fish is like, no, this is just water. I'm looking for the ocean. And then she just gives Joe a look of,
get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm.
And that moment led Joe back to his apartment, where he's just like, huh. And then he finds like the little things that 22 kept in their pocket of, these are my purpose.
Or these are the things that 22 collected throughout the day. The simple things that 22 ultimately fell in love with.
Yeah.
Right? The view of the sky, the feel of the wind, the ability to move, talking.
The taste of food.
Taste of food, yeah. Talking with people. Like, all of that is contained in those items that was ultimately kept in the pocket. So, this is probably one of my favorite visuals that they do. We're, being creators, and a lot of people that have those voices in their head that are just telling them that they're not good enough. How do you visualize that? Right? And I think that was Pixar's challenge, was how do you visualize those moments where all you're hearing are negative thoughts? And they do that beautifully with 22. 22, who has given up at this point their card, is now a lost one. And Joe and Moonbeam, I think that's his name.
Yes.
Joe Joe and Moonbeam are like, well, now we gotta go find 22. And when Joe finally catches up to 22 and goes inside, pretty much the monster, the black mist monster that 22 has become, you see all the nasty things that have ever been said, all the terrible voices that are like, you're not enough. You will never be anything. You don't know what life's about. You will never find your purpose, right? And these are things like we hear too, kind of, or like we fear too as we grown up, right? Oh, we're never going to find our purpose. Oh, we're never going to do this, right? And they visualize this. And then taking some of Joe's words and tossing them back on him. And the other thing is that each time one of those voices come up, it's like this mega picture that is surrounding 22. And it's so impactful because you realize that, like, that's how it sometimes feels when you listen to those voices that are like, you're not enough.
Yeah.
And when he sees his own words played back to him in this big, giant version of him hunched over 22. Oh. Bye.
Sorry, my camera died.
Oh, yeah, hunched over 22. That's when, it hits him like, oh, man, I'm a bit of an ass. But that scene was beautiful in the way that this is how it looks when you feel like you're hearing all of the bad things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't judge. There's no face to judge.
Sorry. Give me a sec. I'm turning. I thankfully I bought spare batteries. But keep going.
Okay. So the scene, of course it ends with him managing to break through to her, and we keep saying her, but that's because she purposely chose a white voice. A white woman's, like, very annoying white woman's voice, I think is what they said in the movie.
Yeah.
So finally, it's like, 22, you deserve this. Like, this is yours. You deserve this. And now 22, the end of the movie is 22 getting their chance to go and live. Right? And of course, the Jerrys are like, okay. And of course, he asks, hey, we never figured out what her purpose was. Never figured out what 22's purpose was. And Jerry is like, and this is the first time the movie straight up tells you, purpose. Oh, you humans and your silly idea of purpose. That's not what that is about. Like, that's the first time they truly tell you that little thing is not about purpose. It's not about having a single-minded thing you need to accomplish.
Yeah. And the Jerrys don't even tell you what that last thing is.
Mm-hmm.
They just leave it as, it's not a purpose. You guys and your purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Type thing.
Yeah.
So, ignore the little grid above me. I don't know how to get rid of it.
Okay.
But yeah.
That's my last thing. I mean, I have another one, but I think I'll leave that in my interpretation.
Yeah, and I think that's where we'll go from here, is into our interpretations of the film. And it's a beautiful film. It shows finding meaning in those little moments and living your life. My interpretation, I should say, is not so much finding your purpose in life, but finding those little moments and those little things in life that just bring joy and inspiration and living a good life. Mm-hmm. So that when you get to the afterlife and you're heading towards the light, you're not upset or sad that you didn't get your purpose. It's just more of, I lived a good life. And maybe hopefully inspired others.
Right. Okay. Try and keep mine condensed. So I took the movie to be a cautionary tale of what happens when you single-mindedly pursue one thing, and how if you just pursue that thing and forget to live, then you end up sort of in that with the view of a life like Joe, right? And the question becomes, when you look back, what do you ultimately see? Do you see yourself living in moments, or do you see yourself hunched over a computer screaming because you couldn't do it? You know? So I took it as a cautionary tale to be mindful of how you live and how you pursue your dreams. Not to not pursue it, but to be mindful of how you do it so that you don't forget to live in those small moments.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last part, and this was a scene I thought we were going to talk, one of us would talk about it, but the Hall of Everything. The Hall of Everything. I think that was really genius to show. The Hall of Everything is what it sounds like. It has everything. And that's ultimately what Joe and 22 go through. And 22's been like, I've gone through all of this. I want to know what you think about the Hall of Everything and its significance to the whole thing.
It's one of those scenes that's like, yeah, they got to experience everything, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of just the shadow of what could be.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, beautiful, but kind of sad.
Mm-hmm. So the way that I took it is that it was a sample. Like you said, everything you could have. And the sad thing is, like, you couldn't feel the wind, you couldn't taste the food. That's what they show in that thing. And that's why it was so important that they showed the Hall of Everything, because it led to the realization, oh, food actually tastes good for 22. They had to show those things. The Hall of Everything for me was a sample of what you would be able to experience once you got to Earth, in that it was there to excite the souls into wanting to live so that they could experience any one of those things, right? Maybe because they couldn't taste food, their interest would be enough that they go, well, that food looks really interesting. I wonder what it will taste like once I get to Earth.
Yeah.
So that's how I took the Hall of Everything. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
No, that's a great interpretation, because it's just like, it is just a sample of, it's like scrolling through Facebook and seeing like the tasty videos of like these foods of like, hey, I want to try that.
Mm-hmm.
Or the DIY videos or the travel videos of, I don't get to experience it because I'm not there, but I could.
Right. All right, so let's give this a score on our still working score system.
I think it's a full wit.
I agree. I give it a full wit. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I know we're a spoiler cast if you made it all the way to this part. I know we're a spoiler cast, but I highly recommend you watch the movie for yourself.
Yeah, if you haven't already.
If you haven't already, watch the movie for yourself. If you have, then we'd love to hear what your thoughts on it. What scenes hit you? What did you take away from the movie? Tell us down in the comment section below. We would love to hear it.
Yeah. And I think that is kind of a good transition into also, if you want to briefly talk about Inside Out.
Oh, jeez. Okay. Oh, why do you want to talk about Inside Out?
Because they're both so Soul and Inside Out are two very great ways of showing life. Inside Out, our Soul is about enjoying those moments and learning about those moments and experiencing them. And then Inside Out and talks about the outside, while Inside Out talks about the inside and how the emotions can affect you. Or in Inside Out's case, depression, and how it's not, oh, you just need to be happy. You just need to be happy again. It's happiness and joy aren't in the command center anymore. And it's just, you get to see this child who's gone through a very big change in life, and how the emotions inside are portrayed in dealing with that. Joy and sadness were no longer in the command center, and all of a sudden you're just getting anger, disgust, fear, until you get nothing. It also is like, oh, that's why you forget things, because the little mind minions are going around and like deciding that's not important anymore. Or, hey, you know that jingle you heard once 50 years ago? Here you go.
Yeah. Which reminds me, our roommates have been running around singing a freaking song off of the Dragon Ball Z Abridge. I have to hear it one more time.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna stand in their room and start singing every freaking TikTok viral song I know.
But so I just wanted to briefly touch on, like, they're both great movies of just seeing life and how a purpose or an experience can shape who you are and how you live, and then how your emotions you can start that conversation with someone about their emotions for children, who's at the control panel right now. What are you feeling and what aren't you feeling? So those abstract ideas become really easy to understand, and you can start building an understanding. How many times can I say understand and understanding of what's happening to someone?
One of the scenes in Inside Out that I really love is when they show one of the core memories. And the way Joy remembers it is it being this very happy time. But the way Sadness remembers it is that so the memory evolves around a game, a big game. And the girl ultimately missed the scoring goal, right? In Joy's memory, she remembers all the good time, the celebrating afterwards, the having fun with her friends, the game, right? The fun of actually playing the game. And then Sadness remembers missing the goal, remembers what it was like to actually go through the process of letting down her team, right? And then how that led to, right? And Joy's like, no, you're changing it, right? But when Joy sat down and actually watched the memory, again, speaking from perspective, watched the memory from Sadness' point of view, the next thing that came from that was a joyful moment of when the parents came and were there to support the daughter.
Yeah.
And that changed a whole bunch of things. And it made her realize sometimes good comes out of bad things. Right? Yeah. Sometimes good comes out of bad things.
Yeah. And it was kind of interesting because the whole thing that set this off was Sadness had this overwhelming need to touch those core memories. And every time Sadness did, they started turning blue as opposed to the gold that represented joy. And knowing what happens after, you kind of get you can kind of deduce that when Riley starts remembering these moments, these core moments in her life that led to Goofball Island, Honky Island, Friendship Island, her personality islands, they're going to be tinted with sadness because she's no longer in Minnesota where all those memories happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like when you are away from that, when you lose something, it's okay to remember them and be happy about them, but you're always going to look back on them with that kind of fond sadness.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the movie also was a way of showing how to handle some grief in moving, right? We know this. I think we've had to leave behind a couple of good friends in the times that we've moved a lot. And there will always be like fond times that I look back on, but also I remember being real angry when we had to move from Wisconsin to Spain, because in Wisconsin I felt like I had finally made some friends and that I was having to leave them for the first time, right? Friends I didn't feel like I had for a long time. And so I was mad and a little upset when I lived in Spain because I didn't fit in. I lost my core group of friends, and now I had to make entirely new ones. And so there was the anxiety of going through meeting new people and having to, like, everything that Riley's going through, like having to go through those exact same things. So I guess the movie hit us pretty hard because we're like, we know. Yeah. We've been there. Feel that.
Yeah. It's just a great representation of if someone's going through something, telling them to be happy about it and telling them that we're so glad that you're still our bundle of joy and you're taking this so well. You're not listening to them. They are allowed and they are feeling so many emotions that trying to be happy through a difficult time can be so detrimental. I mean,
on the flip side of that, the person may not even know how to express it either. Yeah. Right? On the flip side, like, on one side, there's the parents that are like, "Oh, I'm so happy you're okay," because they're worried in their own minds. They're like, "What if we did something wrong? What if there was all the wrong decisions?" And so they're looking at their child and they're like, "What if we messed up?" Right? And then they're looking at the child and they're waiting for the child to say, "You messed up," but the child doesn't know how to say, "I'm upset. I don't like that I'm here," right? Because they want to make sure that their parents are happy because they don't want to put any more anxiety on the parents who now they're watching have their own, mental stuff to go through. I mean, right at the very beginning of that thing, what was the big thing that was messing with the entire family? They get there and none of their stuff is there.
Yeah.
Right? Can you as a child be like, "I'm upset," and they're like, "Well, I'm upset too. I don't have my clothes," right? Like it doesn't work, right? So,
but I like, and I don't not just like mean in the context of the story. I just mean in general. Like, I can't tell you how many times someone has come up to me when I'm mad or upset, and just like, "Well, you should just be happy."
Yeah.
You shouldn't think of it that way. You're an adult now. You should be over it.
Well, that goes back to our video.
Yeah, or that video.
Our video on life, growing up.
And it's like, I can look back on these things and be sad about them. That doesn't mean I'm not.
In those, when people say that to me, like, I've had to change my mindset on that. Like, when people say that to me, you just need to be happy. Remember, I have bipolar disorder. Nowadays, that's all I hear a lot of people say to me. "Why can't you just be this?" And it's like, I can say, well, chemically, my brain don't function like that. But at the same time, I look at it from their perspective now. Like, I have to kind of step out of myself and look at them now. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to do, right? You're angry. I don't know what to do when you're angry. I know what to do when you're angry, like, just step away. But but like, for other people, like, that don't know you or are just getting to know you, or they're wanting to help but they don't know how because they're awkward with emotions as well. Like, they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Right. And so while we want to say, "Don't tell me not to be sad," they're like, I don't know what to. So the better conversation to have there, instead of be this, it's how can I help, right? But that's not a conversation that anybody has been taught. Definitely not in our generation, right? That's not when it comes to mental wellness and mental health. Now we're getting out there. We'll bring it back here in a second. We don't know how to have the right conversations to assist the people that are depressed, that are angry, that are struggling with things. We don't know how to have those conversations. And by extension, when those same people go on to have children, they still don't know how to have those conversations. So they're coming at it from their perspective. Like, this is what I did when I was growing up. Maybe this is the way you should handle it. Because that's all the experience they have to go off of. So, do with it what you will. But that's, when it comes to the topic of, like, don't be this, what is the right question? How do you help? And I don't think we've ever been taught that. And it's only now that the millennial generation is stepping up and saying, this is how we start to bridge that gap and put mental wellness first before we put these other things.
Yeah. But back to Inside Out.
Yeah. Back to that.
One of the other things
but I do like your analogy. I do like your analogy that it is a great way to, like, talk with children. Like, if they've seen the movie Inside Out, to say, who's at the control panel now? I love that.
It's a beautiful start to being able to identify emotions and understand it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But one of the other things I loved about Inside Out is you see inside, like, the parent's head, and different emotions are in charge. So in Riley's head, joy, she's the main emotion. She's in charge of every day, and she's the one who's primarily at the console. In the mom's head, it's sadness, who's primarily in charge. And in the father's head, it's anger, who's primarily in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, oh, that's an indication that everyone's prime emotion is different. Mm-hmm. So they might see that world differently.
Mm-hmm. I also just love the scene where the parents are, like, the little consoles, the two parent consoles are, like, trying to signal to each other.
Put down the boot.
It's so good.
We messed up.
Oh my god, that was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it, like, both movies are just, like, a great way of understanding, of opening conversations of purpose and meaning of life, and then emotions and how you talk about them and how you deal with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if I had to ever build a curriculum of, like, how do we help kids, like, talk, those would be the two movies that I'd put on the list.
Yeah.
Definitely would be the two movies that I put on the list. And I would do that. You would have to start that at a very specific age. I would say about 4th to 5th grade is when you introduce the movie Inside Out, right? Because around that time is when they're actually starting to develop a sense of self and figure themselves out, right? And then it's around middle school, and definitely probably the first year of high school, that I would introduce. Probably the end of middle school and the beginning of high school is when I'd introduce the movie Soul, because that's when we start putting pressure on on them to start thinking about what they want to do, where they want to go, right? Yeah. Especially for some, and probably I would introduce it in the 8th grade, in middle schools, because a lot of high schools nowadays are becoming more targeted. And I'll talk for a little while. You figure yourself out. But they're starting to. So one of the high schools that I went to growing up was a place that had three houses, essentially. It had a business house, it had a communications house, and it had a science house. And each one had a very strict curriculum that they followed on that. So more high schools are starting to become more targeted in that same way. There's a couple of high schools and schools here in Texas that are very targeted as well. So I would definitely want to start introducing soul a little bit earlier to remind them that, hey, even if you're doing these things, don't forget to live. Don't worry if you don't find yourself by the time you end high school. And definitely TikTok is like the app that it just like existential crisis, like every other scroll through, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But we're going to go ahead and end this part here. It's getting a little bit noisy in my apartment now.
Mm-hmm.
And so down in the comment section below, we want to hear your opinions about Soul and Inside Out.
Tell us what kind of conversations you think, what's like good resources for how to start talking about mental wellness and mental health. All right, what are some good resources that you've come across? We'd love to have those down in the comment section below. And you know what to do.
Like, subscribe, and hit that little bell icon so you can be notified of all of our videos.
Mm-hmm. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.